Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fit Chicks Chat. My name is Amanda Quinn, and on today's podcast, Laura Jackson is not joining me because instead I have the incredible Paige Brown joining me. Hi, Paige, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
So good. So for everyone listening, Paige, as I mentioned earlier, she is the founder of The Unspoken Truth. She's an incredible coach, she's an incredible mentor, and she's an incredible friend. So I'm so happy to have you here and just to kind of share the type of work that you do because I think the type of work you're doing is making like massive impact in the world. So I'd love to just start off by like having you tell our listeners a little bit more about you, about who you are, and what it is that you actually do,
Yeah,
because it's
it's like,
totally different. It's totally different than what they're probably used to hearing about when it comes to holistic health and healing.
yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it. So obviously that's good that I enjoy it. But um,
Yeah.
if I didn't enjoy it, that'd be bad. So just my brief synopsis background, I guess my little, what's it called, like note card, like summary for
Yeah.
myself is I started out on the mental health pathway when I did counseling. I became a counselor. I did that for 12 years. I specialized in self-sabotage work back then. I got very fascinated with like EQ work, which is like emotional intelligence work before it was even cool. Like now it's like cool to know these things. I was like the nerd that I wasn't cool then. Now I am apparently. Um, I studied Carl Jung. I did a lot of his work, which is it was very I would say rebellious back then because he wasn't really adopted by either side, sociology or psychology, for a really long time because he was very much more into like mindset work and shadow work and all of these things. And like, the psychologists were so much more concrete and like chemical imbalances, and like the sociologists were more about environmental studies. And I only know this because I did both. So
Yeah.
and it was just really fun to learn. And then I felt that, and this has been a conversation that I've had even recently with a lot of women, is that um therapy only gets you so far, and it's like you sometimes feel like you are put in a box. And I think that therapy has its place. Like I definitely love therapists. I think they do a lot of good in the world, and they give people a place to vent and get the stuff out of their heads to just kind of like clear their brain a little bit. But I think
Hmm.
that there's a point where it hits like a wall, and you have to be able to get over that to get rid of the problem instead of just keep stewing in it and spinning in it. So that was like sort of the barrier for me when I was working in the counseling field, is like I felt like all I kept doing was like repeating the same conversations because they just kept spinning in it. And I didn't
Hmm.
as a counselor, you're not really supposed to push people to an answer. You're not supposed to give any kind of guidance. And so I started my business in 2019 in the evenings, and I was just so lit up by it because I was like, I can actually say stuff. Like, this is great. It's I don't want to see people running to a wall and hit the wall. Like, you can actually
Right.
say something. So, I did it part-time for 2 years, and then I launched everything full-time in 2021. And the essence of what I do is just I work with women leaders. So if they're entrepreneurs, if they're in corporate America, it doesn't matter. I've even told women who are just, I was like, a lot of women don't think they're a leader unless they have like a team. And I'm like, do you have kids? Like you created your own team. Like you've birthed your own human.
Right.
Like you have a team. Um, but I say like anybody who's in charge of anything, right? Like if they're influencer in any kind of capacity or a leader, and I help them redefine the relationship with the traumas that they've been through. And I think that
Mm.
that's really the key to that. And I know a lot of people don't want to say trauma, or they don't think they've been through a trauma, but everybody's been through a freaking trauma. Like if you've been bullied in school, if you were picked on, if you've had somebody die, like all of that is traumatic. Those are normal traumas that everybody experiences. And then of course we have people that go through worse stuff. So it's,
Mhm.
um that's the work I do. I call it the margarita conversations, like where you have to have like 3 shots of tequila to get to the depth of it. But that's what I like. So it's good because that's where the work gets done. It's like, and you don't have to live in it. And I think people are ready to stop carrying this crap, like this 5-ton hammer that they like drag behind them because they feel like all of the things that they've been through create who they are, which it's not a lie, but it's not who they are. It's just these pieces that either can guide them to the right things in life, or steer them away from other things. And I think that that's what people are missing is like that doesn't make you who you are, like a traumatic event. It's just like, oh, maybe this is giving you insight into a deeper thing for you, as opposed to
Hmm.
you thinking that this is who you are. Like, so, um, that's what I do. I do a lot of that.
I love that. And I think what you just said really resonates with me as well because one of my goals in my life is to actually speak on stages and talk about the whole speech that I've written. And I've actually done like as like a test pilot with like a small group just for like I just was like I want to see if this resonates with people. And it was about the idea that your past does not define who you are.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I talk about because I talk a lot about, my life and growing up and what I went through, but then the decision, it's like you reach this fork in the road and you decide because you get to a certain place in life, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like you get to a certain place in your life when now you recognize that everything is a choice as opposed to something that when you're younger it's kind of like life is just sort of happening, but then eventually you get to this place where it's like you recognize it's like I can do A or B and neither of them are right or wrong necessarily, but I have to decide, or maybe some of them are right and wrong, but you have to kind of you make choices, and then that's what really kind of defines who you are is the choices that you're making as the person that you are. And
Hmm.
who you were yesterday doesn't necessarily mean that that's who you have to continue to be. And
Yeah.
and so that's kind of like my whole concept around that. So would you agree with that? And I feel like how do you help people recognize when they maybe are reaching that point, that decision point, and like how do they block out the past noise to then create the new opportunity for the future, for their future self?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with it. So my big thing is like you get to choose. Like you get to choose how you wake up the next day. You get to choose how you step into the world. Like you can literally go to bed and close a chapter and wake up and just decide to do something completely different. Like there is no, and I agree with you. There's probably some right or wrong. Like you don't want to be breaking any laws, right? Like you don't want to do that.
Of course. That's what I
But
meant. Yeah.
yeah, like what you
There's
said.
definitely the fine line.
But I feel like for the average person, right? Like it's more like we all think that if we choose this one path that it closes all the other doors, and that's not true. I actually have a client that I was working with and they were like, but I'm so scared of making this choice because if I choose this thing, then all these other opportunities are gone. I said, what makes them gone? Like that doesn't mean that they're gone. It could be that they're just not ready for you right now. Like you could
Mhm.
you could elevate to another position where now it is a thing for you versus like right now, if it doesn't feel good in your body, then maybe that's not the right decision for you right now and you have to grow to a different like level or point. I'd say level up. Like I'm a big Mario fan, Super Mario Brothers. So it's like level. Anyway, like level up. Or get like the was it the one up mushroom? That one like um, but um but I think that like when they hit those forks in the road, I so when I work with clients, I always ask them like three key questions and it kind of messes with their brain a little bit. But I tell them, first of all, like when you're trying to make these decisions on left or right or whatever it is, and you are choosing to make those decisions, it's not like you said, it's not about like right or wrong or whatever, and it's not about how. It's like not even about like how are you going to make this happen. It's about what are you feeling inside of your body. And I think that's what I do is I really make sure that they're in their body, not in their brain. Because if it's logic, it involves too much self-sabotage if you are in your
Mm,
brain. It's like, okay, well, you're thinking about all the contingencies, like, okay, well, what about my kids? What about my partner? What about my house? What about this? That's not really even on the table when you're just trying to make a decision on what you want to do. Because those are all what ifs. Like, what if, like, and we always, I'm gonna just do a little thing of before I go into the questions that I ask them to help them discern it. But it's like your subconscious brain lives in the negative almost religiously because it's easier and it's safer. And it's
mhm,
so weird that that's easier because we've been bred up on society of like all the consequences to our actions versus all the possibilities to our actions. So
mm.
it's like, well, what if I lose my house? I'm like, what if you get a bigger one? Like nobody thinks about that. It's like, well, what if I lose my car? What if you get a Lamborghini? Like nobody know, like nobody thinks about that. And it's sort of
That's
like,
so
why?
fascinating.
It is, but I mean, don't you agree that that's like literally what
No,
happens? Like
it's
we,
literally this is like my mind is blown because I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Because we
right?
always, and that's, but the way you've described it right now in this moment is like is so gold because I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everyone
Yeah.
focuses on, well, what if this happens? But then it's like, but what about like what's the other side of that? What's the flip side of the coin to see what is possible for you? I like living in possibility. Like I like to live my life always in possibility of like
Hmm.
what is possible. But it's you get caught up in like the negative for sure because your brain is
Yeah.
definitely there
And
to
this is the
protect you.
everyday life, right?
Yeah.
Like just the everyday existence. And like that's why, and I actually made a post about this the other day of like you're letting a 7-year-old run your life when you're living in the negativity instead of the possibility, right? Because a 7-year-old created your subconscious brain. Your subconscious brain was completely done formulating right and wrong, good and bad by the age of 7. So if you're really defaulting to that as your core belief system, then a 7-year-old is running your brain. And I have had a 7-year-old recently in my house, and there's no way in hell I would let him run my brain. Like there's not like think
I
about it. Think about it, right? And it's because
didn't
those
know that. That's interesting.
it forms your core beliefs. Now the nice part is you can change it, and that's what I work with. This is like where you get to pivot and actually choose and take ownership of like what's in your brain. And just because we learned it when we were growing, like and the reason why it's formulated like that is like, when do you learn that fire is hot, right? Like when you're 3 4
Yeah.
years old and you reach for the stove, right? It's the same thing. You learn the same thing. It's like it's all based off our perceptions is why we formulate it by the age of 7. So like for example, your parents get like into a fight because you bring home a bad grade, I don't know, in first grade or something like that, and then they're fighting. You might associate, oh, well, to keep my parents happy, I have to get good grades, right? So that's your perception. That might not be anything that why they were fighting, but that's what you're perceiving it to be. So when you start to get to these roadblocks and you have to make these decisions and you're trying to fight against this like core like cycle in your brain, the first question I ask them is I go, what do you want? And that is such a huge question because it's not about money. It's not about a house. It's not about anything else. I tell them, I don't care about money. I don't care about what kind of house you want. I don't care about how many kids. If you want 2.5 children, I don't care. I want you to tell me what you want emotionally, physically, and how do you want to feel? That's what I
Mm,
want, right?
right.
Because if you're concentrating on all the external, then it's always like this if this happens, then this happens, right? So then it's like, okay, if I have the house, I'll be happy. If I have the money, I'll be happy. If I have the
Mhm.
dog and the 2.5 kids, I'll be happy. Versus if I'm already happy, what do I get? It's
Right.
like
That's
reverse,
amazing.
right?
Hmm.
And
It's like
then
a
I
Uno reverse card.
exactly like slap that up.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the second one is I always ask them, why do you want it? And I tell them it cannot be an external reason. It cannot be because you want to travel the world or all this. I said, I want to know why, because this why should be the purpose that you are put on this planet. That's what it should be. So most people have to sit with it because it's not an easy question to answer. It's like, what is your purpose in this life? Why do you want this level? And why? Because of this purpose.
Mm,
This is your true purpose in life, right? And so that can be I want it because I want like my why could be like because I want to change women's lives in this world and I feel like I should be on stages and making an impact and doing all those things. If that's your calling, cool. That's your why. That's why you get up every single day. Because even
right.
when we boil it down to our own kids, sometimes it can be so hard because then it's like, am I letting them down and all this other stuff? If you're just filling yourself up, it's so much easier to keep moving forward. And then in
Hmm.
essence, it trickles out and you fill up everybody else. And then the last question, which wraps us, this is why I brought this up in the first place, because it goes right back to where we were starting from, is I go, what do you choose then to do every single day that gets you closer to your what and your why?
Mm,
What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you need to leave behind? What are the things you need to take with you? What are the things you need to change? Because there's going to be those things. And that's the first shift that they make. That's like the first major thing. And when they start to kind of go like this again or veer off track, I ask them again, I'm like, what do you want? Are you going towards where that is? Has that
hmm.
changed? Or are you going back in your subconscious brain, letting your 7-year-old take you back off the track and you need to come back. So those are the huge, like those are the three key ones that really make a huge shift for a lot of people.
Those are
Um,
massive.
yeah. They're hard to
Yeah,
answer too.
that's huge. I could see that being a massive problem for a lot of people to answer those questions because would you agree that most people they don't know what they want, they know what they don't want?
Hmm. Oh
Like
yeah.
they're fully aware of like, well, I don't want to I don't want to rent, I want to own. I don't want to do this. I don't want to whatever the don'ts are. Like I don't want to be unhealthy, let's just say. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Or things like that. I don't want to be sick. I don't want these things, but they don't necessarily ever really think about what do they actually want. So they don't actually think about it from the other side often. So when that happens, I think that can be flipping it and asking people the question of what do they want can be really an interesting conversation for sure.
I think I love the I don't. I'm like brain just went like really, really fast. Hold on. Let me pause for a second. The I don't, I know what I don't want is absolutely, it's a distraction. Like that's what I feel like it is. And but I've told people if you want to write down everything you don't want to get clear on what you want, just to get it out, that probably will help you get more clear. But I tell them instead of writing down physically like the external of what they don't want, what do you not want to feel? Right? Do you not want to feel stressed? Do you not want to feel over like burnt out, overwhelmed, all of those things? And that's where it's but yeah, but it goes back to that subconscious brain thing, right? Like we always default into the negative. Like that's just what we do because it's
Mm,
comfortable. And the entire purpose of the subconscious brain is to make sure that we stay safe. So from our
yeah.
7-year old, like think about like and this is a huge shift for a lot of people, but I tell them, I'm like, think about your, like, if you could just, like, when you meditate or whatever you guys do, like, if you're like calming down at the end of the night, if you actually pictured like your 7-year old self standing in front of you and sort of like, what did you do when you used to be scared? Right? Like, it was, I used to like hide in the closet or, hide under the bed or
Hide like
whatever.
hide under the
Like,
blankets.
hiding
Yeah.
under the blanket, you're hiding all the time. And so, the thing that when you're 7 years old and you're scared and it's what your brain is trying to do is make you stay small because that's the equivalency of hiding, right? And so no matter what your dreams are, if it's because you want to run a seven-figure business, if that's your goal, or if you want to run if you want to be like a world, was it like international, I was like, what's the word I'm looking for, international speaker, or if you want to be like just the woman that gets to be one of the senior vice presidents in your company, that's not even a just, that's like this is like the woman that wants to be senior
Yeah,
vice
of
president of the
course.
company, like, or whatever it is. It's like you can't get there if you're playing small, if you're letting all the negative things run your life and if
Mm,
you're letting the 7-year old take hold. And so the reason though that we do that, it's because of all of these trauma triggers. And that's the reason why when I ask those questions, it brings up a lot of stuff and I don't ever anticipate them to get it right away. Like, because what happens is they'll answer the questions and they'll give me what I need and because they feel like they have to. But what ends up happening is they don't feel comfortable with those answers typically. And it's because it really is
interesting.
hard to see it in a different way. But at the same time, there's a lot of fear and a lot of and the reason why I like those questions is because what happens is they then go to that default like trigger in their brain of like being able to be aware of like, oh, well, you remember when I was like 10 years old and my dad was like, you're stupid or said something off the cuff. They're like, I want to, their desire might be, I want to be the most intelligent person in my company and their dad told them they were stupid, well, then you got to rework that story because that's not a true
Right.
story, right? So
Right.
that's where these questions are really key because then they start to bring up all those things in your brain that you just forgot about and you just don't realize are there anymore.
Hmm.
So,
No, it's so true. It's so interesting how it's like our subconscious mind can be driving the bus and all of our past thoughts, past feelings, and past experiences are the main driver of our life if we don't take control of it. If we don't, and taking control, I don't even mean like taking control, I mean like recognizing it, right? Like I've done a ton of work myself personally. And I've shared this on the podcast before with everyone, like that, I went through a lot of like PTSD stuff and I worked with someone for 7 years. It took 7 years of like rewiring, reworking, constant like energetic work and like all of this stuff to be able to move through it to a place where I'm now very like comfortable. But there's still stuff. It's funny. I actually just noticed that there's like this one thing that keeps coming up consistently, but I know where it comes from. But it's from all of the work. If I would
Hmm.
have never done that work, I would never recognize where the thoughts are coming from because I know they're not coming from my position today. They're coming from a past thing
Hmm.
that is triggering, right? But you start to get better at it with the practice that you do and the more work that you do. But would you say like, I mean, because obviously like shadow work and things that you're doing it's like it's heavy work and it's stuff that's like you're lifting heavy loads. The people that you're working with are like they're going into some heavier stuff because these questions, these conversations are going to lead to like a bigger, deeper thing
Yep.
generally. How do you help people manage that? Because I know that that's one of the things that I think puts people like away, like not away, puts them off from doing the work is the
Yeah.
fear of the heaviness of the work. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it can be very heavy. I this is what we were talking I was actually talking about this with a woman on the phone yesterday because she said, I think that you get the biggest, so she had a converse opinion. She was like, I think you get the biggest shifts if you are in like a state of panic or anxiety. And um, I said I strongly disagree. I said I really strongly disagree because you are not even aware of anything going on if you're in a state of panic or anxiety. All you can do is self-preservation in those areas. And so when I coach people, I intentionally try not to trigger them into an attack. Even though that can happen, and I recognize that that can, but knock on wood, I have not in 6 years triggered anybody. So I'm gonna say knock on wood. Um, and it's because of the way I do it. So the reason why they don't get triggered, and the reason why I think that when I started this conversation, I said therapy has its place, is because I think therapy, especially specific types of therapy like NLP or EMDR therapy, is almost designed to take you into a trigger so that you can remember something because you need to remember something, which is purposeful. The way that I work is you are actively already capable of having this memory and it is no longer serving you to have this memory. So the way that I empower women to walk through this so that they feel safe and in control is and I do it in two different ways and I feel like people have to sort of go through both in order to completely let go. But the first version of it is I do a meditation with them where they go through like a hallway of doors in their brain. That's what I always use as a visual. And it's like if you had like a memory bank in your brain and you have all these like shiny doors and then you have these really nasty ones that you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And I always picture
Yeah.
my doors with like giant spiders on them because I hate spiders and that's like that's the no-no door. And I'm like they're
Yeah.
they're
The
like
no door.
dusty. That's the no-no door. We don't like to go in there. And I'm proud to say that I don't have that many dusty doors anymore. So that's good for me, right? But like that's there's so many. And like you said, like just a caveat what you said before is like there's layers to you. So there's always going to be these doors that you have to open. So it's not like a one and done like, oh, I'm cured. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's like we get better at it and it becomes easier and easier over time. So what I do is I let
Hmm.
them open that door that they're ready to open and your body knows which one that is. Like your body knows which memory. That's why I always say it's good to stay in your body because your body knows when what it's and this is another reason why they don't go into the panic or anxiety is because their body's ready to receive it. And so they open that door, and I tell them they are in complete control. I was like, there is no reason for you to experience this as a like an in-person, like you are not reliving this memory. You are literally watching it like it's on an old television. I was like, it doesn't even have to be in color, okay?
Right.
And it's they have the remote, so they can pause it, rewind it, change it, whatever. But then it gets to a point where I ask them that question of if something had changed in this moment, what would it be? And what would you have changed? And can you now play it like it's on television as you've changed it? So like they
Mm,
put it in, they insert it because your brain does not know the difference between a memory and it actually happening when you are
mm,
replaying it. And that's what makes it kind of like cool because you can change a memory. And it's not that you're like lying to yourself, like you won't ever know that that ever happened to you, but your physical response to that memory changes. Like you will now
fascinating.
experience it in a different way. It will now become a positive memory and it no longer will affect you in your subconscious to keep you from moving forward. So that's what you change. The other part of it is I do a timeline exercise and I learned this from my mentor. So I will not say that I did anything with this. I did not create this one, but it's more about meeting you at the age. So like if that memory happened when you were 17, to stand in front of yourself as the 17-year-old because we are so harsh on ourselves when we are adults and we go, I was so stupid when I was 17 because I made that stupid decision and I hooked up with that guy or I did this thing or whatever it is.
Right.
And I was such an idiot. Okay, cool. Now stand in front of you as a 17-year-old. Will you ever tell that 17-year-old the same crap that you're telling yourself? No. You would never
Hmm.
say that to them because they're going to be looking at you after just experiencing that event, if you can picture it, with the same amount of pain that you have. And that's like, you would never say that they're stupid or an
No,
idiot.
of course, you'd be
It's,
empathetic and loving.
and exactly.
It's
So
loving
I have
kindness.
them
Hmm.
have that conversation with that 17-year-old or that 6-year-old or whatever it is. And at the end of it, they like, I'm like, close your, hug this person because this person is still you and you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm,
like, they didn't know. So why are you like continuously punishing yourself and them for making a decision that they had no clue the result of?
right.
Zero. There's no reason to be punishing yourself. You are not clairvoyant. You do not have a crystal ball. If you
Yeah,
knew that that decision was going to take you into a bad place, you would never have made it. So
right.
why are you punishing yourself and this poor 17-year-old version of yourself because they didn't know? And so
Mm,
being able to give them that moment where they can like hug themselves. And my mentor likes to have them like blend back into you as a person. So I've started
mm,
doing that a little bit more recently with people, and it feels so freaking good because I've done it myself. But it's like I give them, for me, I visualize a place in my heart where they're all kind of standing at different ages and they're all just like getting along now. And it's like I got 17-year-old people in there, I got 12-year-old people in there, I got 6-year-old people in there, and they're just all hanging out and they're having a good time. And I'm healing different versions of myself, right? So but they feel at peace because now they're not here anymore. They're not external to me anymore. They're in me and they've been forgiven and we need to move on, right? So now they're just having a party. There might be a couple,
mm.
multiple 17-year-olds in there. Maybe they're drinking, I don't know, but it's like, having a good time, I don't know. But they're just part of me now, and that's the best part about it. And as soon as you can start to accept who you were, then you can now become the best version of yourself now. So that's how I give
Wow.
them that safe space because it's honestly, yes, you cry a lot and but you get to love a lot, which I think is a different way of doing it than just going like, let's revisit all the crap.
Yeah.
Like they don't even have to tell me their story if they don't want to. It still works. It's just that, most of them do, which I'm grateful for, but you don't have to live in the crap, which is that's what I love. So,
Oh, it's so powerful. That was so great. Thank you for sharing that because I think as you're talking too, I'm like picturing everything you're saying, and I'm like, oh man, like I've done a lot of that work. I haven't done all of it, like some of the stuff that you're talking about, but I've done a lot of like the different things and like walking through the doors and stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I think it truly is life changing because it's one of the things that when you're in the middle of something and you're going through some like heavy stuff or you're reliving stuff over and over again and you're in like a repetitious cycle, which is what happens to a lot of people, is
yeah.
their subconscious mind keeps them in a repetitious cycle, a loop. It's one of the most freeing things that you can do for yourself is be able to actually shift and change this. And then it frees up. Imagine the brain space. And Laura and I've talked about this on the podcast, and we talk about it even as friends about like the amount of brain space that I dedicated, the amount of time in my life that I dedicated to certain things, that now that it's no longer a part of like my thought process, my cycle, it's not like keeping me stuck. the amount of brain space I now have to now think about other things that are serving me in a positive as opposed to in a negative context, as
Oh, I know.
opposed to holding me. It's it's literally like you feel like just like you're living as a different human when you
Yeah.
actually release some of this stuff. You really and truly feel that way. And I think it's one of the most powerful gifts you can give to yourself.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think it's one of the
it's
biggest investments and one of the most important investments that you can do for yourself is spending the time and finding the right person to help you through that. Because I think you you could do it alone, but it's hard. It's really hard. And
it takes a
I
lot
don't
longer.
yeah, and I think that having someone guide you that has the expertise and has the knowledge and everything is just it's going to fast track you. It's going to help you be able to get to the place that you want to be. I had like an amazing person that I worked with, like I said, for those 7 years. I went every single week for 7 years. And they lived like an hour and a half away, and I traveled once a week to go there and do this work. And sometimes we did no work. Sometimes I just sat in silence. It depended. It depended on my energy. I was really I
Yep.
was letting my body lead me through that process. And they were as well. They were an alternative therapist. And it was so powerful though, and it changed my life. And I'm so grateful for that person. But so I share that because I think, you have an event coming up. Share
Mhm.
with our listeners, because unfortunately we have to go, and I feel like we have so much more we could talk about.
I know.
So I feel like
We should
we
do a
need to have
part
you
two.
back on. Paige, we got to have a part two for sure and talk more about like shadow work and what that is. But can you just share with our listeners before we have to end this interview? Can you share a little bit more just about your retreat and the type of stuff that you're going to be doing? Because this is going to be life changing for the people that attend.
Yes. So it's called the Find Your Voice Retreat. It is in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which is near where I live. And it's going to be in this beautiful house on the beach, which I'm super excited about. I personally am excited about just staying in the house, to be honest with you.
It's going to be
Um,
amazing.
I know it's gonna be so good. But with each woman, the intention is to take them through. It's only women, women only. Sorry, guys, if you're listening. Sorry, like you can stay home with the pets and stuff for a couple of days. But it's March 19th through the 23rd, and the intention is to take every woman to identify that one thing in their body, like that their body's telling them that they need to identify, just like we talked about like a few minutes ago, and letting them go through that process that I'm going to lead them through. We're going to do it as a group. It's going to be a lot of support. It's going to be a lot of encouragement. It's going to be a complete safe space. The women I've already t spoken to about it all have varying forms of traumatic situations that they're ready to just let go of. And that's really what the entire point of this is. It's going to be like if you're feeling stuck or heavy or just like, I am done carrying this crap around, we're going to take that thing. And by the time you leave, you're going to be able to let it go. You're going to empower yourself. You're going to take it, I would say, like the bull by the horns and just
Yeah,
really empower yourself to like do these exercises. And I'm going to walk you through it so that you can repeat it, so that you understand it and you can take it with you. So if you need to refresh that brain, you're going to be able to do it even without me being there. Um, but beyond that, it's going to be fun. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have a little black dress party at the end of it. I'm super excited about it. And we're going to
beautiful.
have a community building opportunity. And it's just going to be, I think that probably honestly one of the best things I've ever done. It is going to be a small group. We're gonna have 10 women that have done we have, hold on, how many, we have about 6, 7 spots right now still that we have to fill. And so first come, first serve. And
Yeah,
so but it's going to be, and the reason why we made it small is because I wanted to be able to make sure that each woman had that transformational experience. I'm going to do one-to-one sessions. We're going to have a massage expert who's going to actually do energy massages with them. So doing the stretching, the movement, getting their emotions out of their body, and then a movement expert as well to just get us from our head to our body so we can do the work, and then meditations. And it's just going to be such a really beautiful experience, especially on the
amazing.
beach. So that's what I'm
Amazing.
super excited about.
I love that. I love that so much. And so, I mean, if anyone here is listening and you're like, that sounds incredible, make sure you check out the show notes. There's a link to reach out to Paige. Her contact details are there too. So if you have any other questions specifically that you want to ask her, you can reach out. Paige, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge. Like literally, this was just, oh my gosh, so much gold in this interview because those questions alone and just the power behind that and understanding just the community that you're building and this experience at the retreat. I mean, I might be joining, so so maybe I'll see
Come
anyone.
on
So
down.
if anyone's listening, maybe I'll see you there. I'll see you in Virginia Beach. But Paige, thank you so much, and for everyone listening, thank you for listening to Fit Chicks Chat, and we will see you again next week. All right, bye everyone. All right.